Good day, everyone. I'd like to thank each of you for your time today. I'm David Testerman with BrokerHunter.com, and I'll be your moderator for today's presentation. Broker Hunter is proud to be launching a new initiative called the Talent Community Learning Series. Our goal is at Broker Hunter is to bring you some of the best thought leaders and experts in the financial services recruiting, career advancement, and industry trends. The reason we're offering these is simple. We really want to provide you, the Broker Hunter talent community, with the best tools and tips to help you advance your career or find your next great one. Today's webinar is the first part of a 5-part series called Extreme Success, How to Land a Great Job and Advance to a Better One with Peter Weddle. Before we get started, I would like to thank Allstate Insurance for their support in sponsoring this unique event. We will be providing additional information about Allstate's opportunities during the course of the webinar series at a later time. I'd also like to take a moment to ensure that everyone is ready and familiar with the webinar control panel. If you'll go on your screen there, you'll see the webinar control panel. We will be doing a Q&A session here at the end of the live presentation. What you can do is just submit questions via the chat pane. We will be getting those at the very end, so be assured that your questions will be answered. If for some reason we don't have time or time doesn't permit for us to do that, please just bear with us, and we will be answering your questions via email as well for those that we aren't able to get to during the live session. With the housekeeping items now taken care of, I'd like to tell you all a little bit about today's presenter, Peter Weddle. Peter has authored and edited over 24 books and been a columnist for the Wall Street Journal, National Business Employment Weekly, and CNN. He's been described by the Washington Post as a man filled with ingenious ideas. Peter's also the CEO of Weddle's Research and Publishing, which specializes in employment and workforce issues, and is also the managing director of the International Association of Employment Websites, which is the trade organization for the global online employment services industry. In addition to that, Peter's a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point and holds advanced degrees from Middlebury College and Harvard University. So with the brief introduction out of the way, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce everyone to Peter Weddle. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thanks, David, and welcome everyone. As you can see from the cover slide, we're going to be talking today about the extreme job market and the extreme workplace. Now, why call them extreme? Because they are profoundly different from any other job market or workplace that we've experienced during our careers. They are, at one and the same time, both extraordinarily difficult and a platform for extraordinary success, for what I call extreme success. But in order to achieve that success, you have to first understand the difficulties. Now, the world of work today seems to have turned upside down. You know, what we thought we knew no longer seems to make any sense, and the rules of the game that we had always used to achieve success no longer seem to work. Countless job seekers are now experiencing this kind of situation. Quote, I submitted my resume for a job where I was a perfect match for the requirements and responsibilities specified in the job opening. And I never heard anything back from the employer. It was like I sent my resume off into a big black hole. And countless employees are enduring an experience that sounds something like this. Quote, I did everything they wanted me to do. I put in the hours. I got decent performance appraisals. And I never took a call from a recruiter. And still, I got laid off. No matter how much loyalty, no matter how much dedication I showed my employer, I still found myself out on the bricks. So what's going on? Well, let's take a look at each of these environments. Let's take a look at the extreme job market and the extreme workplace in a bit more detail. You know, whether you've got 30 years or 20 years or 10 years or even 5 years invested in the workforce, you've grown up with a job market that's best described as come as you are. This job market has been the governing dynamic in the world of work in the United States since the end of World War II. And it was pretty simple. Basically, you looked for a new job with the skills that you had in your old job. So when you were in transition, all you had to do was update your resume, send it out to a bunch of employers, do a little networking around the edges, and bada bang, bada boom, you would have several job offers, at least one of which was better than the last job you had. It was a system we all understood. It was a system we all came to rely on. And most importantly, it was a system that worked. And today it doesn't. Today, depending on whose numbers you accept, there are somewhere between 11 and 13 million Americans in transition, out on the bricks, looking for jobs. Now, some will tell you that this job market is just like any other job market, only harder. It's more difficult. So being good Americans, what do? We try harder. We use the same tactics, the same strategies that we've always used. We just do more of them. And unfortunately, this is the kind of result that we achieve. We achieve extreme failure. The situation in the workplace is just as difficult. We are now seeing three kinds of serious problems in the extreme workplace. The first is that jobs with decent pay are way down. During the last recession, the so-called Great Recession, we lost 7.5 million jobs. Half of those jobs were middle-class paying jobs. They generated middle-class wages. Today, 4 years into the recovery, we have only seen 3.5 million new jobs created. So we haven't even recovered half of the jobs that we lost. And think about this. Just 2% of those new jobs that we've created generate middle-class wages. So even if you can find a job in the extreme job market, in the extreme workplace, more often than not, it doesn't employ you, it doesn't pay you commensurate with your skill and experience level. Second, full-time jobs are also down. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, temporary employment, temporary jobs are up 45% since the recovery began in June 2009. That's a faster pace and a greater pace in the use of temporary workers than in the 2001 recession and the 1991 recession. Basically, what employers are doing is no longer hiring people for full-time positions, but rather, like in Hollywood, they're pulling together ad hoc project-based teams of temporary workers in order to get the work done. And finally, job security is down. Think about this. The average tenure of a Fortune 500 CEO is now down to less than 4 years. If that's true at the top of the heap, you can be sure it's true everywhere else in the enterprise. According to the U.S. Department of Labor, people entering the workforce today are going to experience 14 job changes by the age of 38. And that pace of change will occur in every other level of seniority. So what does this feel like? What does this situation feel like to the men and women who are out there trying to find a new job or advance to a better one? Well, I'd like you to imagine that this handle opens the door to success. And no matter how many years you've had in the workforce, you've always been able to go through that door to achieve success in your career because you've known the key. The key that opens the door was represented by this sequence of numbers. 12 is to 6, as 6 is to 3, as 10 is 2. And you always knew that the answer to that final number was 5, half of the sum above. So 6 is half of 12, 3 is half of 6, 5 is half of 10. But what has happened, what it feels like is that while you weren't looking, somebody came along and changed the key. And now there is a new combination of numbers required to get through the door of success. When you put 5 into that sequence of numbers, the door no longer opens. So that leaves you feeling lost. You no longer have sure footing in the world of work. Your confidence in your future is undermined because you don't seem to be able to do what you've always been able to do successfully. Somehow, the key has been changed. 12 is to 6, 6 is to 3, but 10 isn't to 5. So to get back on track, to be able to open the door and to continue to move through it to success, you need to get the new key. Now in this case, the new key happens to be 3. It is the number of letters in the word above. So there are 6 letters in the word 12, 3 letters in the word 6, and 3 letters in the word 10. But what are the keys in the extreme job market and the extreme workplace? Well, let's take a look at the job market first. There are still plenty of good jobs in the American economy. But what is new is the key to success. And that key to success is that the definition of qualified has now changed. You know, in the 20th century, previously, we knew how to find a job was to prove that we could do it. And the way that we proved that we could do it, the way that we would be perceived to be qualified, is if we could show that we were a match with the specified requirements and responsibilities for the opening. But today, that's no longer true. Today, employers don't want you to prove that you can do the job. They want you to prove that you can excel on the job. The employer's goal used to be getting the job done. And what you needed to have to do that was experience. You needed to know how things got done. And if you had experience, if you understood how to get things done in the real world effectively and efficiently, you were going to be successful. But experience is no longer enough. Today, employers need superior performance. They have to have expertise, state-of-the-art skills and knowledge, as well as experience in order to consider you to be qualified. So what recruiters want to see from candidates today are candidates that have the capacity to excel, that see themselves and that brand themselves in the job market as a person who has the capacity to excel. If you can position yourself that way in the job market, you go from being seen as a job seeker, a supplicant from work, to being seen as an asset, someone that employers will compete over in order to hire. Why is this happening? Why this extraordinary change in the job market? Well, it's being driven by something called the singularity. Now, that was a term first coined by Werner Ving. He's an academician and a science fiction writer. And he coined the term to designate that point in time when machines would become smarter than humans. Now, he thought that that would occur in the year 2035, so happily we haven't gotten to that point yet. But the point that we have gotten to is something that I call the economic singularity. That term designates that point in time when the workers in companies outside the U.S. become smarter than many workers in companies inside the U.S. They have more up-to-date skills, deeper and more up-to-date knowledge than many of the workers in the American workforce. In effect, what has happened is that American employers are no longer competing with cheaper labor. They are competing with smarter labor. And therefore, they need candidates who can demonstrate, who can position themselves in the job market as people who have the capacity to excel. Now, what's going on in the workplace? Well, there is still plenty of opportunity in today's workplace, plenty of opportunity to land and hold on to full-time, high-paying jobs. But what's new, again, is the key. And here, the new key is the definition of value. What it takes to be perceived as a valuable employee has changed. It used to be that you prove that you were a valuable employee by being loyal and hardworking, right? What employers wanted from you was dedication, and you showed your dedication on the job by the investment of time that you made. The more face time you put in on the job, the more time that you spent on your free time, laying on the beach, theoretically on vacation, checking your BlackBerry for emails back in the office, the more valuable you were perceived to be. Time was the key to success, and now it's not. Today, what employers need is ever higher productivity and ever better quality. So instead of just being a loyal and hardworking employee, what they want is someone who can deliver originality, creativity, innovation on the job. It's not enough to just invest time. You have to do superior work. What employers want then are workers who not only have the capacity for excellence, but who bring that capacity to work with them and apply it on the job every single day. If you can position yourself that way in the workplace, you're going to go from being perceived as a human resource to being perceived as a valuable asset, someone that employers will do everything they can to retain. Now, what's driving this change in the workplace? What's driving this change in the workplace is the extraordinary growth in new knowledge. Think about this. In the year 2008, we human beings created 4 terabytes of new information. That's a 4 followed by 20 zeros worth of new knowledge, new insights, new information, new ideas. That was more new knowledge created in that 1 year than in the previous 5,000 years of human history. If you go to college today in a technical field, by the time you get to your junior year, 50% of what you learned in your freshman year will be obsolete. So this unrelenting growth in knowledge means that in order to compete in the global marketplace, a global marketplace defined by the economic singularity, a global marketplace where knowledge is moving forward at warp speed, companies have to have workers who have the capacity for excellence and bring it to work with them every single day. So what makes today's job market and today's workplace extreme is the prevalence of change. Change is the new norm. It is the dynamic that's shaping the entire world of work. New technology, new products and services, new processes and procedures, new competitors, new marketplaces. It is a kaleidoscope of the unfamiliar. Equally as important, however, is the fact that that change is happening ever more rapidly. Moore's Law. Most of you have probably heard of Moore's Law. It was articulated by Gordon Moore, the CEO of Intel. And basically it says that the power of computers doubles every 2 years. Well, what's going on in the job market and the workplace today is that change is occurring just as rapidly as the advancement of computing power, but in a very different way. Instead of doubling, the quality of your knowledge is being cut in half every 2 years. In other words, the half-life of your knowledge is now down to just 24 months. That means your qualifications diminish at that rate. And unless you attend to them, unless you reinforce them and refurbish them at a rate that keeps them not only where they were, but where they need to be to compete for the new jobs that you want, you're going to fall behind. And the same is true with the value of your contribution. The value of your contribution is being cut in half every 24 months. The half-life of your perceived contribution, the way that employers look at what you do to help them achieve success, is now down to 24 months. So here's the choice that we all face. We can either be the master of that change or its victim. We have that choice. But the only way to achieve mastery is to do the one thing that we human beings most hate to do. We have to change as well. We have to go from the devil we know to the devil we don't. Now, I suspect that you're asking yourself, despite everything that I've described about this extreme job market and this extreme workplace, you're probably asking yourself, why go to all that trouble? And the reason is simple. Actually, there are two reasons, and these two reasons form the pillars of extreme success. The first reason has to do with your pocketbook. Employers are battling over people with the capacity to excel. They call it a war for talent, and they're waging it the only way they know how, with money. Look at this. 7 out of 10 employers are now paying hiring bonuses in order to recruit people that they perceive have the capacity for excellence. Almost a third, 31%, are paying starting salaries that are above market value in order to attract people that they believe have the capacity for excellence. Equally as important, employers are also trying desperately to hang on to people who deliver excellence on the job, to keep them employed. So almost 4 out of 10 are now paying retention bonuses to hang on to those superior performers. And almost 2/3 are increasing the salaries that people are currently being paid in order to bring them up to market level and therefore hang on to that talent. So one upside to recognizing the dynamics of the extreme job market and the extreme workplace and adopting to it is your paycheck. The other benefit has to do with what you achieve inside yourself. There's been a whole lot of research recently in the field of positive psychology. And this research reveals that we human beings don't have access to just one beneficial state in our lives. We actually have access to two. The first beneficial state is an emotional state. It's best described as joy. It is the state we achieve when we interact with the people that we love, our family, our friends, those with whom we have great relationships. It's one of the most important gifts of human life. But there is another gift that is equally as important. It isn't an emotional state, it is a cognitive state. It is the state best described as happiness. And the way happiness is achieved is by subjecting ourselves to a challenge that we believe is meaningful and worthwhile, and which enables us to stretch ourselves, to express more of our inherent abilities so that we can experience what it's like to be a better version of ourselves. And that occurs, that kind of cognitive state is most likely to occur, the research shows, at work. It is at work that we can face challenges that are meaningful and worthwhile, and where we can be encouraged, enabled, empowered to stretch to a better version of ourselves. So what we've done today is we've talked about the extreme job market and the extreme workplace, and it is, as David said at the beginning, the first session in a 5-part series that's all about helping you practice extreme success. Extreme success is a system not to help you survive, but rather to ensure that you prosper in the new world of work. And you achieve extreme success by doing 5 things. First, you have to understand the new dynamics in the world of work. What makes the job market an extreme environment, and what makes the workplace an extreme environment. So that's what we've covered today. Next, you have to change the way that you see yourself. You have to adopt an extreme success mindset. And we're going to talk about that in session 2. Basically, you have to reimagine yourself as a person of talent. Then in session 3, it's not enough to just see yourself as a person of talent. You actually have to become one. So in session 3, we're going to talk about how you become the kind of person, a person of talent that employers will recognize and respect. In the fourth session, we're going to cover some new strategies and some new tactics for managing your career so that you ensure that you are not only seeing yourself, but that employers continue to see you over time, between jobs, into new jobs, as a person of talent. And finally, in the last session, we're going to talk about state-of-the-art resumes and other kinds of employment records that will enable you to memorialize the successes that you've had in the past and to position them in a way that will ensure that they reinforce your credibility as a person of talent going forward. So that's the 5 changes, the 5 steps that are involved in achieving extreme success. And we're going to cover every single one of them in this series. So I hope that all of you will not only come to the next session, but to come to all 5 so that you can really take full advantage. You can leverage the full power and promise of the Extreme Success System. In the interim, if you'd like to know more, let me just briefly tell you about 4 books that I have out there. The first is called the Career Fitness Workbook. It is a complete regimen of activities that you can use to ensure that your career has the strength you need to not only find the job that you want today, but to hang on to it tomorrow and position you for the next best job you want in the future. A Multitude of Hope is a novel about the changes underway in the American workplace. Its subtitle is A Novel About Rediscovering the American Dream. It's a book where you can go and sort of empathize with people. If you're in transition, this is a book about you, and you can, I think, get some sense of how this new extreme job market and extreme workplace are buffeting you around, and also what you can do not just to survive but to prosper. The Career Activist Republic describes a new breed of worker, a person in a cross-generational cohort of American workers, people who aspire to be the best they can be. And those are the people who are positioning themselves for true extreme success today, tomorrow, and into the future. And finally, the Success Matrix is a collection of my columns in the Wall Street Journal and at CNN on how best to conduct a job search, how best to manage your career in the world of work today. All of those books are available at Amazon.com and also at my website, Weddles.com. In addition, I write 2 newsletters. They come out over the web every other week. They are free, and I encourage you to go to my website and sign up for them. There's a newsletter about best practices in job search, and there is a newsletter about best practices in career activism, in managing your career for extreme success in today's world of work. That's the conclusion of this first session. I'm going to turn the program back over to David to answer your questions.
Great. Thank you very much. And for those of you out there, this is David Testerman again. I can attest, I've been on Peter's newsletter list for, almost a decade now, I think. And really, from a career management and just from getting great job search tips that a lot of times you can't get anywhere else, I highly recommend at the very least to do that. The books themselves can be found on Amazon. As Peter had alluded to, the Career Fitness Workbook would be really something that would be a great investment. Not sure of the price over on Amazon. I think they're just $12, $14, something like that. So not a big investment there, but I think it would pay some huge dividends to think about picking that up before the next sessions. Now I want to sit here. Have a few questions here. I think we're starting to get a few of them come in. I think the first thing everybody's doing, Peter, is everybody's a little shell-shocked because there's a lot of change going on, and people are a little reluctant there. But and that's why this webinar was broken up into 5 parts, because it's probably best served out in little tidbits for you to mull over for a couple days and then come back for more. But I think you did an excellent job of laying out some things here. One thing I get all of the time, Peter, and we actually had a couple people, is I know we're going to go over this in subsequent webinars, but how does somebody, saying they're starting back in the job market, looking around, and they're overwhelmed? Let's say they've been out of been happily employed for the last 10 years somewhere, and all of a sudden you're back in, you're starting to look for work again. You're taking a look out there, and certainly the way one goes about looking for jobs has changed dramatically in the last decade. You have any tips for somebody that's feeling a little overwhelmed there on how to pace themselves and kind of keep things in perspective?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, I on the one hand, there is a fair amount of research that some percentage of job seekers don't treat that transition as a full-time job, and it is. It may be the hardest job that you'll ever have, particularly in the Xtreme job market. That said, I think that the principal disadvantage that people face the longer they are in transition is the perception of a gap in their skills, a gap in their expertise, a gap in their experience. And gaps are self-inflicted wounds. One of the things that we're going to talk about in terms of job search tactics in one of the later sessions is the fact that one of the most important ways, the most effective ways that you can differentiate yourself in today's job market is to go back to school. I don't care if you got a PhD. I don't care if you're the CEO of of a company. I don't care if you've got 30 years of experience. Given the kinds of statistics I cited in today's webinar, this is an environment that is highly demanding in terms of expertise. So if you go back to school to refresh or add to your primary area of expertise, or to add some important ancillary skills, and then you put that on your resume with an entry that might go like this: Bronx Community College, Introduction to Business Spanish, ongoing. You're going to have a dramatic competitive advantage in the workplace. That entry is like a catnip for employers because it says two things about your character that most resumes don't address. The first is that you acknowledge that you understand that in today's workplace the acquisition of new knowledge is an ongoing process. It never ends. And secondly, it tells an employer that you take personal responsibility for doing so. So if you'll add that one thing to your resume, if you'll take that one additional step, I think that a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the concern about how you break into this job market will go away.
Yeah, that's a very good answer there. Yeah, I think you're starting to see a lot of folks here, and we're getting some questions here. You're getting real extended lapses in employment, obviously, right now, especially as we're coming out of the last downturn, where people have been, out of work for 12, 24 months, and even longer in their field. Kind of keeping yourself engaged, I think, like that's a wonderful tip, because I think going along like that for months and months and months can be very discouraging. I think you've got to manage that, like you had indicated, a job, and make sure that you and recognize the fact that your skills are being dated even while we're employed, but perhaps more so, when you step out of the job market and you're changing careers. So, other questions are kind of coming in now, Peter. Another question. This is kind of a tough one here too, but we'll certainly tackle it. How do you prepare yourself to compete in a global economy like we're experiencing right now, and what can we, meaning the job seekers, do to give themselves an advantage?
Well. I think that all of us at some point in our career have heard the phrase lifelong learning. And it was good advice, but the way that it was actually practiced was episodically. That is, we did personal development sort of on an as-needed basis, and we did it from time to time. Oftentimes, unfortunately, we did it when it was convenient. And with a global economy where organizations outside the U.S. are employing working men and women who have state-of-the-art skills, state-of-the-art knowledge, the only way that we can successfully compete in that environment is to up our own game, which means that we have to go from lifelong learning to continuous learning. Some of that learning, in fact, much of that learning has to be formal rather than informal. The informal learning that we used to do, we called experience, and it was important. But as I tried to suggest in the brief description of the job market, today expertise trumps experience. So experience is still important, but it has to be married with expertise so that we can deliver that excellence on the job. And I believe that's the only way that we can be competitive. The real advantage, and I'm going to be a little patriotic here, so forgive me, but the real advantage is that most of our competitors are by choice homogeneous cultures. You know, the workers in China and the workers in India and the workers in Japan, they're all wonderful people and they're all formidable competitors. But at the end of the day, they only have one kind of talent. We in the U.S., for all of our problems, for all of our disagreements about immigration, we're the only country on the planet with every kind of talent there is. And if we can harness that talent, if we can get all of us to really perform at our peak, to deliver excellence on the job, the United States as a whole and each of us individually will compete just fine.
That's a great answer, Peter. And I think that, you know, I've heard it summed up too, is that the pace of change now is that, I say kids, but kids in college or young adults in college right now are training for careers that don't even exist yet when they graduate. That's the pace of the change we're seeing.
If I can just add a thought there, because I'm very critical. I have been in my Wall Street Journal column of the educational establishment in this country.
Yes.
For the last 75 years, sadly, we have the best higher education system in the world, and we have graduated career idiot savants. We've taught people a whole lot about a particular field of study, and we've taught them absolutely nothing about how to build a career in that field. Now, in the good old days, that was okay, because up until the 1990s, we had the GE model of large human resource departments. There was a corporate career ladder. There was the gold watch, and all of that stuff starting in the 1990s went away. So people never learned how to manage their careers, and now their employers aren't managing their careers for them. Now, contrast that with the situation in China. Every student in China, as a requirement of graduation, has to take a year-long course called Personal Mastery, which teaches them the principles and practices of career self-management. So we're going to talk about that in our series. But one of the key skills that we need to be successful to compete in the global marketplace is not only our core expertise in our profession, craft, or trade. It is to be equally expert at managing our own careers.
Okay. Here's an interesting question from someone here. I don't know if we can totally answer this, but this would be worth a stab at as well. Person here is a consultant, and they said they're on 6 to 9 month engagements at a fairly high level. Says that they see this type of thinking among senior executive, I guess C-suite level folks. But as you get down into middle management at corporations, it says that they're not ready for this type of thinking, and to counter that point, they even seem to stifle this type of thing as well. They're very, very resistant to change at that level. Is that, and they're asking, is there any suggestions on how to work around this if you're wanting to excel, but you're being held back by the chain of command?
It's a great question, and I think sadly it is an accurate description of many, but not all enterprises. One of the things we're going to talk about in the series is the 7 facets of building what I would call career fitness, a healthy career, as a part of preparing yourself to compete in the job market as well as to hang on to the job you have and advance to a better one. And one of those 7 facets is to work with winners. And I would argue that the leaders of enterprises which don't push that kind of vision, that kind of value and culture down into the organization and demand it of middle managers is an organization that is dangerous to work for. I think that you're putting your career at risk by working at a place where you are going to have to battle with the chain of command to actually express the values that are allegedly supported by the CEO. And if you are a person of talent, as I indicated from the numbers from the SHRM data, you're going to have your pick of employers. And you need to pick those that are winners, those where the C-suite is not only talking the right way, but they're walking the talk and demanding that everybody else in the organization do so as well.
Yeah, that's a very good answer there as well. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think at the pace at which things are changing now, to rest on your laurels, so to speak, is perhaps as dangerous as anything else a company can do right now. Here's a really very specific question that I have heard something along this theme quite a little bit, my career here at Broker Hunter, but this is an industry-specific one. But a person here says that they've worked as a trust administrator for 25 years, thought that they were going to make a full career here. They were getting somewhat close to retirement. Person says that they're actually 60 years old, so they were laid off. They said they've gone through the application process. Obviously, this person's coming into a job market here that's completely foreign to them from when they looked 25 years ago. This person says they sent out a lot of applications online. They say that one hurdle they feel like they're seeing is that somebody's seeing that this person's maybe near towards the end of the career, but they're trying to convey to them that, hey, they're wanting to work for another 10 to 15 years, and that also what's the best way to maybe help them position themselves that they are a hard worker and a quick learner.
It is sadly a very important question. Age bias is alive and well in this extreme workplace. Look, as David mentioned, I have the privilege of running the International Association of Employment Websites, which is the trade organization for job boards, social media sites, career portals, and so forth. And here would be my tip. You want to practice the application 2-step. Okay, when you see a job posted on a job board or a career portal, absolutely you should apply. But it's a test. It's a test in 2 ways. First, it's a test to show whether you care enough to tailor your resume to the specifics of the opening. If you submit a generic resume, you're going to be considered a generic candidate, and you're going to go into the generic circular file. But if you take the time to tailor your resume to the specifics of the opening, you've met half the test requirements. The second half of the test in step 1 is to prove that you paid attention in Mrs. Murphy's kindergarten class. What you learned in Mrs. Murphy's kindergarten class was to follow directions. So if the job posting says, attach your resume, don't embed it in the email. If it says embed it in the email, don't attach it. If it says send it by paper airplane, send it by paper airplane. Follow directions. That's step 1. The problem is that that recruiter is probably going to get a couple of hundred resumes in response to that opening. So there is some probability that even if you are a perfect candidate for that particular opening, your resume will never be seen. There's just so much time in the day that recruiters have to review resumes, and they don't look at all of the resumes that are submitted. They would like to, they just don't have the time. So that's where step 2 comes in. Step 2 is all about networking. The minute you submit that resume, you want to start networking through your contacts to try to find one of 2 kinds of people. The best, of course, is somebody that you know that works in the organization. The second is someone with whom you share an affinity. You're members of the same professional society. You went to the same college or university. Your kids are members of the same soccer team. Whatever that affinity may be, you want to ask those individuals, see if you can find one of those people who will hand carry your resume into the HR department and put it on the desk of the recruiter. Because at that point, you virtually assured that your resume will get considered. recruiters have a bias themselves. They believe that the best candidates are those that are referred by their own employees. So in today's job market, the best way to overcome age bias is a referral, because what happens then is that the recruiter is willing to look past some of the things that might have been red flags in your resume, because this individual, this coworker, this fellow employee has taken the risk on their part of walking in the door and recommending you to the organization.
Yeah, that's very good. And I think a little insight there, Peter, like you just gave on the kind of, put yourself in a corporate recruiter's shoes. And I think a lot of folks, maybe perhaps don't realize this, but that in a lot of cases these folks are tremendously overworked, and they see literally just deluges of resumes and applicants coming in and all of that. So just so everybody knows, one of the first disqualifying things is, as Peter said, is you really have to follow the directions to a T, or you just almost immediately disqualify yourself. And it's a shame that it's like that, but literally it's just the amount of information they receive on a daily basis. That's you just don't make the first cut that way. And then as Peter alluded to, no matter how much of a fit you are for a position, if you're just absolutely perfect for the opportunity, the application submit button is the start of the job search for that, not the end. So you need to use that as Peter said, the two-step, and really use that as just really the jumping off point for you to really pursue that job. And a good litmus test is if the job's good enough for you to sit there and customize your resume for, then it's worth submitting to. If it's not, and you just want to hit the apply button and see what happens, then usually the result ends the same way. So I think that's excellent there. And I think that is the way you handle the age bias. I think one thing that, there's probably biases on every conceivable thing you can think of that a recruiter has that you may or may not even know what that particular person's hot button is. But I think the way around that is by doing that very thing, is, following directions and being very, very, professionally aggressive in your approach, networking, utilizing the various tools out there, and, that will yield typically better results. We're going to get into some more stuff here. We're going to be running out of time here in a minute, but we have a few more good ones here. Peter, what are your views on social media to advertise or promote yourself via the Internet? And this is for a candidate.
Well, social media is clearly an important arsenal and important weapon in any job seeker's arsenal. However, I believe that the way that Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook have come to be used have taught people some bad lessons about networking. Most people view those three sites and the networking that occurs there as a contact sport. The more friends you have on Facebook, the more followers you have on Twitter, the more connections you have on LinkedIn, the better off you are. And that simply isn't true. Networking is not a contact sport. It is a team sport. It's all about building relationships with people. The people who are going to be most helpful to you are people who paid attention to their mother. What was the first lesson our mothers taught us? Don't speak to strangers. I mean, stop and think about it. If you're removed from a person on LinkedIn to the second degree or third degree of separation, and you're employed, are you really going to take the risk of walking in the door and recommending him or her to your organization? Probably not. So the key to networking is to practice the golden rule of networking, and that's as simple as it is profound. You have to give in order to get. If you want people to be helpful to you, you have to first be helpful to them. You can do that online, to be sure, but most of the relationships that occur online are relatively shallow. You don't really get to know people. You can't observe their body language. You can't, have the sort of unexpected, unplanned for interaction that will enable you to determine that both your kids have the same names or whatever it may be. Those things occur face to face. So I'm going to encourage you to, yes, of course, take advantage of social media. But if you're going to use social media where you can build relationships. And the single best place that I know to do that is either in a LinkedIn group that focuses on financial services or treasury or some other aspect of your particular expertise, or your professional association, the discussion forums, the chats, the listservs on those particular professional society and trade association sites. That's where you're really going to interact with and get to know your peers. And if you're helpful to them, they're going to be helpful to you. But I'm also going to really encourage you to get out of your fuzzy slippers, get back in the real world, and go to the face-to-face real-world meetings of those professional societies and trade associations and any other affinity group that you're a member of, your college or graduate school alumni organizations if they have meetings, and mix it up face-to-face with them. That kind of networking is indispensable and may ultimately be more helpful to you, ironically, even though it's kind of old-fashioned, than social media on the web.
Peter, we've seen that firsthand too. Is I think there is a lot of noise out there, and kind of a funny thing I've heard people say is just because you have 800 friends on Facebook doesn't mean you actually have 800 friends. I think that, as you said, it's become so easy to network casually on the internet that you really have to foster those deeper professional relationships, and really nothing replaces that than getting involved in some of these organizations and in areas that you're interested in. But utilizing these social media tools like your LinkedIn groups. Many of you are probably members of the Financial Services Career Center that Broker Hunter owns on LinkedIn. That's a good one. But there's a ton of other ones on there, obviously, that you can be among your peers and start engaging with them. But don't let it stop there if you can. Any chance you have to get out there in person, face to face. The funny thing is it's done so infrequently, probably now than it used to be, as it becomes that much more effective. We found that in our business as well. So I think a lot of people have seen that. It's again. There's so many other ways for people to communicate now that the simple face-to-face or networking like that is really invaluable. We are getting a ton of questions pouring in. I think we're going to run out of time here real quick, but I think one more question here real quick, and then you're probably going to answer this in subsequent webinars here, Peter, but we've had a couple questions here about, first thing employers and recruiters ask when they're getting an interview or they're talking to them on a phone screen is, they're asking about why they're not currently working. What's the best way to handle that? I think you touched upon it by not allowing yourself to have any gaps. But what if somebody keeps pressing the issue on that and saying, look, why haven't you been able to find a job in the last 6 to 9 months? What's a good way to handle that?
Well, I think that the key is to put yourself back to work. And I suggested earlier that one of the best jobs you can take is personal development, and be in a situation where you are adding to your core expertise or ancillary skills. Another tack that people take is to work for a volunteer organization, but make sure that you're working in a way that applies your core expertise or skills, so that you can make the case that your skills are fresh and are being utilized on a day-to-day basis. It is true. You put 100 recruiters in a room and you give them a choice between 2 equally qualified people, one who is employed and one who is unemployed. 98 of them are going to pick the employed person. And the reason for that is that they think if that individual is good enough to be employed by somebody else, they're good enough for the organization to hire. What we have to do is to reposition ourselves, and I've talked about changing the way that you are memorializing your expertise on your resume by adding that ongoing personal development. Another thing that you can do to try to transform yourself into someone who is a work in progress, who is always trying to add skills, is to go back and at the top of your resume, we typically tell people to put a skill summary. And I'm going to suggest that you expand that to a skill and knowledge summary, that you add there the wisdom, particular kinds of learning that you've done in your career that will enable you to deliver excellence on the job from day one. And then in one of the previous employment situations that you've had, sure, you're going to talk about what you did. Yeah, you're going to talk about your accomplishments. But after that, add a section that said what I learned. What expertise, what insight, what knowledge did I acquire through that job that I can now deliver for the new organization? Those kinds of things will help you appear not to be at a disadvantage with someone who's working, because you're going to be reflecting on your resume the fact that you've been growing, developing, adding insight and wisdom all of the time.
Yeah, very good, very good. Well, we've covered a lot today, Peter, and we appreciate your time. This is a great presentation, and we're looking forward to the rest of the series here. And I'm sure many of you out there will think of some other questions once we go offline here. And feel free to either hang on to them till the next webinar, which I'm going to pull up a slide here of where we are. Today was the first session here. This Thursday at 2 p.m., session number 2, the Xtreme Success Mindset. You can certainly ask any questions there, and we'll get a little more in detail here. Or feel free to reply back via email to Peter or myself with any questions you have. Here's what happens next, y'all. We're going to have, again, these 4 more sessions coming up here. We're going to do a Tuesday, Thursday rotation here. So next webinar is going to be Thursday, May the 23rd. We're going to break until the following Tuesday, and then we'll have Thursday, May the 30th, and then June the 4th. I will be sending everybody today a link back to this recorded webinar, in addition to a registration link for session number 2 if you've not already signed up. We're also going to send you out those 2 items, as well as a place for you. We're going to archive the slide deck as well. I know a couple folks had asked about that as well. So we're going to work on getting all of that archived out there for you to take advantage of as well. So keep an eye out for the emails we're going to be sending out here shortly. This concludes today's webinar. We look forward to having everyone back on Thursday. This is a great session, a lot of good ideas bouncing back and forth. And Peter, thank you as well for the great tips, and we look forward to having you back on Thursday.
Thanks, David. I'll look forward to it as well.
Very good. Everybody have a great day, and look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Goodbye.